I want to talk about our man, Wout van Aert. Wow, van Aert. Unbelievable tour. What a ridiculously good rider he is. Like you said, he's a classics winner, but he's won Mont Ventoux, the hardest mountain stage of the race. He's won a time trial, and he's won the Champs-Elysees, the sprint. Ridiculous. How can you be that good across all key things? And you made a really good point about what does this say about, what kind of rider you need to be to improve your bike riding.
Yeah, ask that question in a minute, but I want to say, first of all, because our second home is Belgium, we think we're Belgium, so he's part of us now, Wout, and we just love seeing him win. And some of our friends in Belgium always are texting us saying, our man's up there. So it was fantastic to see the versatility that this rider has, and this is the lesson that I absolutely want everybody out there listening to. You give yourself more opportunities. And as we've talked about this whole podcast, you may not get many opportunities in your age grouping career. So if you're a well-rounded rider like Wout is, imagine the possibility that you can win a hill climb. Imagine the possibility then you can come out and win a time trial and then win the sprint on the biggest stage. The Champs-Elysees stage is the biggest sprint race. That's the Olympic Games of cycling sprinting. And if you've ever won on that, a stage, in a sprint in the Tour de France, the Champs-Elysees trumps every other stage. And, there's only been 100 Champs-Elysees winners over the journey of the Tour de France. And some riders have won it 5 times, some riders have won it 2, so there's very few of those people in the history of the world. And, this is an outstanding example of being so well prepared across all facets of cycling. And he can't do this unless he's got an engine. And how do you get that engine? Well, threshold riding is one of the big key reasons why he is such a dominant rider in spring classics, winning Milan San Remo. It's the longest race in world cycling, nearly 300k, and he wins it in a sprint. He's been in Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix on the podiums, really hard, tough one-day stages, and yet he can come out and win Ventoux, mountain stage, which doesn't suit him whatsoever, but unbelievable tactics, getting himself in the right position, taking opportunities when he could. And then the Race of Truth, which proves that he is an unbelievably good rider because he can ride threshold. And if you don't want to work on your threshold, you think time trialing is a poo-hoo subject of cycling, this is a great example of how important it is to use threshold.
Just to clarify, when you say the Race of Truth, you do mean the time trial, because that's your favourite saying is the time trial is the race of truth. It's you against the number.
Absolutely. And it is, it is the proof of who is the best cyclist. There's no tactics. Well, there's execution tactics, but you're not actually, fighting against other people. It's the best rider will win.
Yeah, to be honest, Ben O'Connor coming fourth was my favourite part of the tour, but a very, very close second was seeing Wout van Aert win the Mont Ventoux stage. The last couple of K up that climb, he looked pale with exhaustion. He had gone so hard. He had ridden as hard as he possibly could, and they were starting to really catch him in that last 2K. The gap went from, I can't remember what it was, 4 minutes to a minute 30 in just a couple of kilometres. That showed how much he was slowing down, but he had given it everything. And what an incredible individual performance it was to see that, and to see the pain an athlete would go through to win was amazing.
It reminded me, Jord, of the race finished at the top of Ventoux. It didn't really. It finished 21k down the road. But a rider understanding where the race really finished, because the biggest gains in time trial are when it's the hardest sections. And when he went over the top of the climb, the time gap stayed almost the same. Yet 5 minutes prior to that, he lost a minute and a half in 2K. And that's an example of how important it is when it's the hardest period in a time trial situation, which is what it was. He was time trialing up Ventoux against these guys, and they were making huge gains on him because of his exhaustion, because of what he'd been out in the break for 150k, and they'd been sitting in the peloton, so they were making the most of it. But when they got over the top of the hill and it was downhill to the finish, there was no time gain. And that's what we drum into our athletes every single day. The biggest gains are when the bike's going slowest.